Alright, hey guys, what's up? So today I thought I would do, or tonight, I thought I would do a really quick sort of first look preview sort of thing of the Minimathing from Modusworks. I wouldn't call this a review because I haven't had it for too long, just like a week. So yeah, I'll just tell you my first impressions on it. And yeah, so let's get started. So first, let's do a size comparison. So we have the Minimathing, and a lighter, and a carrot, and a shot glass, and a Zentri Nano. It's pretty good. Okay, cool. So it's about the height of a Zentri Nano. Yeah, so if you have one of those handy, that's how big it is. Or if you have a carrot handy, it's about a little bit shorter than a carrot. All right, so the Minimathing. This is the bronze version. It's made by Jonas Nix of Modusworks and is actually, I think, his second spinner design. The first one is the Spinimathing, which is about 2 inches long, if I'm not mistaken. And this one is, I think it's, oh my God, I had a ruler here this whole time. I don't know why I did that with the carrot. So this is 3.5 centimeters. All right. And the buttons, I believe, are 24 millimeters, and they're pretty thick. They're thicker than normal buttons, actually, if you'd allow me to show you, because this will become relevant later on. So that's the thickness of the buttons compared to Zero Feud 22 millimeter. And cool. All right, so the Minimathing has an SBV2 bearing installed. I think this was a pretty recent development that Jonas partnered with Heck, and so they started putting FC Essentials bearings in these things. They all come serialized. This one has a satin brushed finish, and it's very, I didn't notice anything out of the box. I didn't notice any scratches or patina or scuffs or anything like that. So that was neato for a $200 spinner. Next, so this thing spins pretty well. It's very smooth, but that might be because of the bearing, because an SBV2 is notoriously smooth. But the thing is that I think it's slightly unbalanced because at very high speeds, it'll sort of jump out of your hand. It wobbles quite a bit. And then, when you do the balance test, not quite staying there. So, yeah. And then at high speeds, like when I give it a two-handed flick and then, or rip, and then if I don't get it, you can see it's like sort of wobbling. It's vibrating a little bit. Yeah, and you can really feel it when you have it between your hands too. But these things are hand milled by Jonas, and each one is done one at a time, except for the chamfers. I think the way he does the chamfers is he sets them all up in a line, and then he just, I don't know machining. This is what I learned from the group. What I saw in pictures, he sort of like runs the metal knife across and chamfers it like that. So yeah, but that's kind of neat, and I think I forgive the precision on this because it's really neat that it's handmade, and I really appreciate that about this. I think it may not be the most ergonomic spinner out there just because, with these edges, they're softened, especially on the Minimathing. I think they're especially softened because when your middle finger can, when you're spinning it, your finger can catch on the edge. And if it weren't softened and it were just an edge like it is on the full size, it would be a little bit rough. But, oh my God, I have a full size Spinimathing. Wait a second. Wait a gosh darn second. Yeah, I have a Turbo Glow. Why didn't I bring this out earlier? I don't know. I forget things. I forget I have things around the house. But yeah, so these are a little bit sharper. You can't really tell because it's, Turbo Glow, but they're not softened like the edges on these. And another thing about ergonomics on this spinner is that the way Jonas designed it was so that the buttons would be compatible across all of his spinners. So the full size used the same size buttons as the mini. And even though the mini is like half, 3/4, I don't know. It's like way smaller than the Minimathing. So all of these buttons can work together. I don't know, maybe I can screw this one on. I haven't tried this one. I think so. Oh yeah, look at that. So yeah, they're all compatible with each other. And while that is a nice touch, and I feel if I owned more Minimathings, that might be pretty cool to, you know, be able to swap out all the different materials and styles of buttons. I don't own like more Minimathings because they're, you know, expensive. But I think in terms of ease of use, it's not super great because you can't really switch buttons on this, because the buttons that most manufacturers or makers use are way, what?
Sorry, I just zoomed in.
Oh, it's okay. They're way thinner. So when you try to spin it, it gets caught on your finger. Like you can't, if you have to hold it just so for it to not get caught while you spin. It's not super easy. So all of his stuff is proprietary. And I have, also look at how nice this looks with a smaller diameter button. I think if I were to make a design change on this spinner, it would just be to make the buttons 22 millimeters and then bring the weights here closer in so that they're snug against the button like this. Because also with the big buttons, you don't get to feel as much of the bar because the button is in the way. You know what I mean? So like your finger can't flick on this portion of the bar. It's like limited to these two spaces right here, which are kind of small, and so it's not as easy to spin. And I found that I have a set of pressure bar buttons that are thicker, not as thick as the stock buttons, but they are thicker than most R188 spinner buttons. And with these, I get I can spin it, and it's just easier, it's nicer to flick. And with this is one of the only spinners that I also prefer overhang on as far as buttons are concerned, because with the 20 millimeter button, because the surface of the side of this Minimathing is completely flat. There's no little dip or curve to the side. So if you were trying to flick it with a 20 millimeter button, I would imagine that sometimes your finger might not get a good leverage point on it to be able to flick forward. Like it could just run along the flat and not really get a good flick. But with a 22 millimeter button, if your finger's resting right here, it can sort of, you're coming at it at an angle instead of just straight along. So that kind of helps. So this is one of the only spinners that I like overhang on the buttons on. So yeah, what else do I have to say about this? I think it is not the most ergonomic spinner I have. And it probably isn't the best at spin times either because of the balance. It's not super precise. So I imagine that would affect how long it can spin. But I really like this spinner because I think the fact that Jonas does it all by hand is really cool. And that's something sort of special in this market where everything is CNC'd. So yeah, it's, I like it a lot. I think that if only the buttons were smaller, like it was sort of redesigned to be proportional in this size instead of just chopped off on the ends, like a bigger, like the Minimathing were chopped off. If they, okay, so if it were just that, if it were that it was shrunk down proportionally and not just like chopped off at the ends, that I would like it more, just because then it would really be feel more like a mini spinner rather than just, you know, half of a full-size spinner. Yeah, that would probably make it one of my favorites for sure, but just as it stands in my personal preference and the way that I think you can fidget with this, and because you only really have this part of the bar at the ends, I would just prefer if it were shrunk down, the buttons were shrunk down a little more and the design was a little bit redone. So yeah, you get a nice sticker with the packaging. You get a pouch, a plastic bag, and this box, and then the Modusworks card. I think that is all I have to say for this pre-review. Yeah. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.